I have a very kind-hearted musician, very kind enough to donate one of their songs to be remixed in this brand new video series. So I hope that kind of down the road we can work on different genres, different songs, and I can reach out to different musicians to see what I can do to improve on their mix, or even not even just improve, but just maybe change the artistical style from it. So going back to this very first song that I'll be working on, it's called Challenger. And once again, shout out to my boy Andre Miranda. Thank you very much for recommending this track and giving me this track to rework on. What makes this one a little bit different is it's kind of like a reimagining of the original song from Zero. So if you want to check out the original track, or pretty much this original version before this current new version, I guess, you can check it out over on his Zero EP, which is out on your favorite platform. And let's actually start. I'm going to actually just play a little bit sample of it. Let's actually go, I will say, just a few bars here. Let's take a listen to it. Hopefully for you headphone listeners, or I don't know, monitor listeners or computer speakers, you may want to turn on your volume in case it may be too loud for you. I don't really know how loud this really is, so just be prepared. Just quick little warning. Turn down your volume at least 25% of what you're listening to right now, just in case you blow out your ears. Actually, I'm going to take my own advice too and do the same thing. So I'm going to pull up my mix, or sorry, in this case, our volume faders. I'm going to just dive it down a little bit here, and pull up the volume if I feel like I need to, if I think it's too quiet. All right. So in 3, 2, 1, it's preview time. What you really want to do for any type of song, doesn't matter what it is, what genre it is, your own song, someone else's song. If you're working on a piece of music in a music production kind of setting, recording, mixing, songwriting, whatever, focus on just listening to the song. What is it trying to do? What is the artist's or musician's intention behind the song? All right, so what I'm going to do is write down 3 sections and put my notes down. So this kind of gives you a context of what I mean by just focus on and hearing what the song just needs. We don't need to add so much stuff. The song already sounds amazing. We just need to add more life, or just see what we can add artistically, and maybe even in cases improve the mix if we could. So let's actually take a listen to it, or let's actually break it down in sections. So first one, I want to talk about the good. Let's keep it simple. The bad, so not so good, and improvements slash additions. Sure. Let's actually go with that. So we're going to go with these 3 sections here. We're going to actually take one last listen to it one more time for this little segment here. Again, see if I can actually make this main vocal line very more aggressive, like rap music, hard hitting, and just keep that taunting there, but more adding like a 5-degree, 10-degree into that, adding more fire to essentially the vocals. It just needs that more aggressive style, I guess. So let's go. Let's just say aggression. All right, the next thing we need to do is our cellos need to be more defined, because we're having so many different layers of cellos here, and each one does require a specific attention. And the biggest problem right now is we're having all of our cellos essentially kind of like all fighting for the same thing, and that's kind of what we don't want to do. We want to essentially give each cello its room to breathe and give it kind of this clear distinction. So this is kind of like where the drums is kind of in this really weird situation. There's aspects of it, like if we listen to it by itself, it does sound very good. But then it's kind of getting lost with like the density of this mix because of the cello, and there's so many frequencies that's just so unhinged and untamed that it's kind of like sucking out some of that space from what the drums could be, where the drums could be populating itself from. So there's going to be definitely some cleanup work. The very first step is to break down this mix, see what it's doing, see what it needs, and then try to improve it and reimagine it. So that's kind of the purpose of this section here. So we're going to jump ahead in time where I'm able to essentially show you the very beginnings or the working through of this remix. So first things first, I always like to recommend is to kind of organize your tracks. Good gosh, this looks like a mess. So let's actually go ahead and do that. So and then we have our piano. We do have some background vocals here. So everything's kind of making sense a little bit right now, but let's actually just double check 1 sec here. All right, so everything kind of makes sense so far in terms of the organization. Shout out to my boy Andre for doing a good job organizing this. So one thing I always like doing or really appreciate is when artists or musicians that send you a song can actually label them properly. So that way you don't have to guess what it is. Let's take it another step further and actually color code it. So this way it's easier to identify what's what. And give myself this kind of green color here. And I'm going to start to change up my colors a bit here. So that's what we have right now. Okay. So looking a lot better here. Oh, I better title this something different here. So let's actually take a listen to it first and see what's up. Most audio, in this case, there are issues that do pop up with having such strong dynamics or strong volume recording levels. It just kind of creates this very distorted kind of feel to it, and it just limits how much more things we can put into our mix, just because this is already taking up so much master volume space, because we have 18 tracks and they all go through this channel here. So that's something we have to be very mindful of, and that's kind of where what mixing is all about. It's all about creating a balance that works. So what that means is we want to make sure that things are loud enough and certain things that are quiet enough, but it does come out and still comes through the mix. So we do have to find that perfect balance where it kind of we can make 18 tracks work together. For now, let's just focus on taming those levels, getting things to come out a little bit cleaner first. So our kick is a little bit stronger just because of the transients. So that means when we listen to a kick track, it comes out stronger in volume, but it dies off really quickly. But again, that's something we can tame right away. We can do a little bit of gain reduction here just because later on we can actually reintroduce some of that energy back into this kick, but we can actually duck it down just a little bit here. Just about, I'll say about -2 is good enough. Overall, really good. We just essentially quickly went through the drum kit and the bass. They were looking really good. Not something I'm worried about. So generally around for our kicks and basses, our rhythm section for our mix, generally kind of around like this -6 area for the track, meaning that it peaks around -6. It's generally a good area. Of course, there's certain tracks like the kick and some aspects of the bass peaked at a certain point, but it's very momentary, but it's generally kind of consistent around this -6 area here. So next we have our cellos here. So this is where I feel like we can do some sort of gain staging because we just don't need that much volume for these cellos, just because they do occupy a higher aspect of our frequency spectrum. So what we can do right now is we can actually gain stage them a bit. So gain staging is essentially what that means is you're adjusting the volume on the audio clip, not the volume fader. So this is something where there's a clear distinction for this, is that we want to make sure that we're doing proper gain staging, not volume fader adjustment, because that's a different thing. So honestly, we can go down as far as -4. We really don't need that much frequencies because these cellos cut through pretty nicely overall. So we don't really need that much unnecessary volume for it. I'm going to go 5 for this one just because it is a tad bit stronger. All right, so let's actually take a look at it now. All right, looking a lot better already. So I feel like definitely we can even go a little further with the adjustment here. I'll say even to 5. Again, what this does is that it kind of allows more room for other volumes that we can give it to that needs it, instead of the ones we don't need it for. Because what these cellos are doing is kind of this very stab-like kind of sound to it. So it's a little bit higher in frequency, so mid to mid-highs. So we don't need to give it too much volume just because they cut through so nicely in a mix that we should be giving more volume to other things that do need it more. All right, now let's actually take a look at our piano and see kind of where that's sitting at. Again, our piano is super duper up front. We don't really need again, it all just comes back to how much do we need for these. So at the end of the day, it's better to just prioritize and kind of tuck back some of these gains because we just don't need that much for especially these tracks here with our cellos and piano. They cut through a lot easier compared to like our bass and our drum kit overall. So we should prioritize and give a little more volume space. And again, it just adds more distortion and clippiness. So let's just take care of some of those. And again, because of what we're doing here, so far it kind of doesn't really make sense because by doing gain reduction, we do kind of bring down some of the volume. But again, this is just gain staging. The next stage, the next step after this is static mixing. That's kind of where we add in the volume fader, where we adjust the volume faders. So this will work alongside with our gain staging. So this actually kind of will help make it more apparent. So that way we can shape our song a bit more. Things feel more audible and more tangible compared to before. So let's actually play a small preview of what the master track looks like with what I've done so far. You can hear things a lot more better because initially we had our vocals and our cellos being so up front. Now it kind of feels like you can hear other layers and other tracks within this mix. So far it's sounding quite nice. Through the power of editing, we will continue to refine this mix and make it sound better each time. All right, we're going to continue off and actually really get started with kind of designing this mix first. And we're going to actually get into the funner stuff a little bit later after this. But what I really want to focus on is kind of just get a mold for this mix that we're going to work on, especially with Andre's mix here. All right, so there's 2 ways to approach this. Generally, we do from either starting from the full 0 and fader down, and just kind of we slowly wedge it down if we need to. But generally, I kind of like doing from bottom up. So what that means is fully muted, and then slowly we bring in the track's volume progressively. All right, so we're going to play, let this, oh yeah, we're going to make sure it loops. So it is looping. We're going to loop the track, and then we're going to slowly bring in the mix, the track, sorry, and then we're going to assign positions for it and get the volume in. So hopefully this will help give Andre's mix and this remix a different light. So this is going to be the start of things to come after. All right, so we have a issue here because one of the tracks is fully audible on the left but not on the right. So that could be because it's the stereo mix out. So oh boy, we're gonna have to fix this a little bit here. So just to make it for consistency's sake, generally a little quick tip for those of you out there that's, when you're sending files to a mix engineer or you're mixing a song, an oversight generally for most people, Andre included, is that you got to really be careful with having your files exported in a certain way that makes sense. Because essentially what we're doing right now is that we want to mix and kind of get things positioned properly. And from what I can hear right now, the audio is panned far to the left. So what that means to me is that when it was exported out, it's exported out as a stereo file. So in this case, there is that issue of, or it was recorded and exported out as stereo. So in this case, you can only hear it in a certain direction. So this is something to be very mindful of because it does happen a lot. Not saying it's the end of the world, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're working on vocals, especially if you're recording some sort of audio. Make sure for the most part you're recording in mono. That's a tip. Record in mono. When you have it mixed out, like let's just say we're having the final version of the song, like the mix, then we can do in stereo. But for the most part, make sure to do everything in mono because that way we have better control of our audio so it's not confined to one side. So a little future note to you too, Andre. All right, so we're going to fix that very quickly here. Not the biggest problem here, but we just need to keep that in mind. Yeah, so we're having all these multi-layering. All right, so I think that's about it for the static mix. So honestly, I think there's going to be a lot more work we need to do with kind of controlling our dynamics a little bit more for Andre's mix here. Everything is starting to kind of make sense now. We're starting to get kind of a rough mold, but we still need to go in there. And I notice there's some tracks that has a lot more dynamics and more compressed and a little bit too harsh, that's overtaking some frequencies over others. Again, we didn't use any plugins, so of course it's going to sound low. Of course, it's going to be a little bit more all over the place, but I think right now, just based off what we're doing and work on this track, it's starting to look more and more like a mix. So this is the start of it. We're still going to have to iron it out. I can't wait to work on the next session where I implement some goodies into this. So yeah, let's continue
So we're gonna
do
a quick test here for levels and stuff.
So there's a few options we can deal with this particular mix and with our stereo bus. And generally, these are the three plugins we want to consider adding. First is our EQ, second is our compressor, and third is some sort of stereo whiner. You don't always have to necessarily use your EQ and compression. It really just depends on the song. At this point, I feel like it's more so of the individual track EQ we need to focus on versus the overall mix. All right, let's go with what am I thinking here? I'm gonna probably go for a classic compression route instead. So I'm gonna actually opt out some few sounds here. Let's see. I'm actually gonna go for a few settings to see what kind of fits our context of the song here. It is a light, smooth kind of style for me. So let's actually check out these presets first. If they don't work, I'm just gonna manipulate it the way I'll manually manipulate the settings instead. So let's see what we have here. Let's try the Fat Dance Master. So I'm going to go over some of the settings I did actually for this track here. So I kind of messed around with our compressor here. I don't want it to be too much, but just enough kind of like enhancement for our overall mix right now. And just start designing it from there. So just going for my compressor here, I kind of went for a preset. I messed around with the settings a little bit. Went a little bit harder on the threshold because I wanted to compress harder. Because this song is already very dynamic and our transients are harder. So I want this to press it harder because we already have a pretty decent amount of good gain and volume that's going on for each track. So we just want to make sure we just capitalize on that and push it a little harder. We have a 4-to-1 ratio here. Attack, I left it kind of default. Didn't really need to adjust much.
release, I kind of wanted to have it kind of like a little bit of a mid kind of type of release. Then we have our makeup game. We dialed it back all the way down. We don't need this to be super duper loud because I feel like the dynamics for this song and for each track is sounding really good. It's more so of we just need to go in, EQ it, and kind of clean it up a little bit. And this will actually get this mix to sound great. I've been kind of cooking this next part and just been really thinking about what we can do to kind of add more life to this mix and kind of change it up in terms of what the original mix sounded like. That's the whole point of why we call this the Remix It series. But pretty much, I was given the permission to pretty much destroy the song. Well, I'm going to have a little bit more liberty and ability to free roam and explore different terms that I normally won't do for my mixes. There are a few other things I want to try out. Mainly probably like the cellos, mostly the bass stuff. Our cellos are pretty processed, so honestly what we do to it won't really add much value to this mix. But I think if we can do something with just like the low end cello bass, we can do a little bit more with that. In terms of our vocals, I think it's pretty good. So honestly, there's really not too much processing as I had initially in mind, just after going over this song a few times and listening to it a few times. But I think we can definitely do something to shape out the kick and a little bit of the low end to add a little bit more to this mix. So we're going to experiment and learn, and hopefully you can kind of explore with me kind of different ways and learn different approaches to maybe how to do your own mixes and stuff like that in the future. So, all things good. The best way to really approach this stuff is using our best tools we have in our hands right now, which is Google and our best friend YouTube, of course. So let's actually do that first. Okay, audio inputs doesn't really matter. Just probably create a subtrack of some sort. So that way we have a grouping here. Oh, good gosh. Just call it drums P for now. Honestly, I haven't really started on this yet. So let's just leave it at our drums here. Oh, gosh. All right. So it seems like he had it on post, though. Okay, so this is so let's actually do what we learned with our sub kick here. Sub bass kick. So it's just adding more weight to that sub frequencies. So we're actually sustaining kind of more. We feel more of that low pulse energy from our kick. So this is going to be really heavy processing actually for our kick here. But again, we're just shaping our sound. I do have an idea of how I want this. So one sec here. Let's actually start with a preset here. I don't do this very often, so this is definitely a new thing for me to try out. All right. We're going to try out some presets we have here. This is a great little plugin. But yeah, this is definitely a great plugin for stuff like this. So let's actually just mess around a little bit to just get a rough sound. I like the little bit of distorted sound to it. It actually does sound pretty good because we, butchered it a little bit. Hope Andre does not mind this too much. But yeah, it's actually pretty good. I really like the little bit of effects here. So I'm going to probably add a little more presence just to see what it sounds like. Oh, yeah, they're much better. Oh, yeah, there we go. Now we're really getting the drum kit. Of course, one thing to always kind of like really remind you guys, especially when you're mixing, is I always like to mention about is any type of effect or alteration you want to add to your raw track, never do it on the original track itself unless it's for a specific reason. So I'm going to actually add, again, following the same idea with our kick, we're going to distort our cellos a little bit here, but we already have quite a lot of processing that's going on with these cellos. And honestly, adding too much will make it sound worse. Let's actually just add a little bit more to just change up the sound here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a subgroup again. Let's call it let's instead our audio output. That is not what we want. So let's actually add a little bit of filtering. Let's actually pull up our amp again and distort the tones a little bit here. So I'm going to go right here and let's go for a crunch sound actually. So I'm just looking for a sound I would want, and it will shape it from there. Now that's a bit too much, even for myself. Alright, so honestly, I noticed with this track, again, like I said, there's really not so much I can do to change up the sound because there's already so much processing on these tracks and sound altering effects on it. So what we really have done on my end was just kind of added a little bit more texture and a little more fullness for the rest of the tracks. So what I mean by that is I notice with kind of on surface wise, it doesn't seem like there's much change. However, if we listen to things closely now, the kick just feels more fuller and the bass, and we can actually hear remnants of the cello distortion kind of running through the cello. So we can already hear those right now. So bear with me because right now we're going to head over and actually start rebalancing this nightmare and add in the sounds and see how we can lock things more in place. So let's continue on and actually shape off this song. Good gosh, there's so much to mix. So now what we're going to do is refocus and kind of rebalance our mix to get it to sound nice before we take it into the individual track processing. So let's actually go ahead. We're going to have a lot of work ahead of us, but as of right now, we want to make sure we just get something consistent where we have a decently balanced mix, and then we're going to go from there. All right. Alright, so let's actually try focusing on taking away some of those elements first. We don't need everything all at once. Let's get the static mixed properly first. Let's redo our kicks now because we have all these new additions. Pretty good. Let's add our sub bass kick to see where that works. Let's move this out the way.
All right, again, you probably notice as we are working on this mix that of course there's still some sort of frequency blending here, especially with our cello bass and with our kick drum. It's pretty normal because we haven't even touched our EQ yet, but once we really get into the individual track processing, we can really define these sounds more cleaner, crisper, and it'll sound more better. All right, sounding pretty good now. Let's actually add our cellos in. This is what we have so far in terms of our standard mix. Now with our new additional added tracks in here with the sub kick, the kick techno, and the cello distortion that I added into Andre's mix here. So now let's actually take it another step up and forward and actually start to increase this current sound and make it sound a bit better. So I'm going to take a few more listens, and through the power of editing, this is the best part. You don't have to get to see my boring face as I kind of go in and just tweak it a few more times. But I'm going to listen to this a few more times. And then with the power of editing, we're going to skip forward and hit to the part where we actually incorporate the stereo bus mixing. That's kind of where we process the master bus here. And just to juice up the song a bit more before we get into the individual processing. Okay, now we're going to continue on this mix and actually start to add some individual processing into the equation. So far we actually built our balance now. So now we want to go inside each track and see what we can do to enhance or improve on our tracks here. So in order to prepare that, we do have to have our mono plugin on. So again, for me and for yourself, that every DAW should have some sort of mono plugin. So we're going to just plug that in and turn that on. And now we're still retaining what we're doing from before, but now we were confining it to mono channels. So now we can really go in there and actually shape it up a bit more here. So alright, so I'm going to put my cellos a little closer here. I just noticed in mono, it's sounding a little too wide. Let's actually mute the rest of our tracks here. So now what we're trying to do is really go into our drums and actually shape it up a bit more here. So let's see here. So we have our drum processing here. So what we can do, okay, I'm trying to think of what's the best way we can approach this, because we do have our parts of our drum kit. We have our parallel drum P here. Let's funnel into a drum P here. So our drum P here is actually empty. So what we can really do is sign the sign a little bit more here. So what we're gonna start doing is applying our EQ onto our mix.
especially into our drum kit here. So I noticed it needs a little bit more thickness in terms of where we want the snare to be. And kind of that rim shot sounding kind of weak. And that's kind of more like the crack of the snare. So I was thinking kind of a little bit more weightier, decision will be kind of around the 250 to 500 hertz, kind of for our drum kit, so our snare can benefit a little bit more from the thickness. And even with the kind of around that 4K area, 3 to 4K area around our snare, our crack of our snare sound to pop out a bit more. So let's actually start with just some basic stuff first. So of course, we can always just filter out some 30 hertz here. We have a lot of low end frequencies coming on here, so we don't really need all of it in this case. So what I'm going to do is actually emphasize more on the thickening up the snare a little bit more here. Again, we want to be careful of how much we apply, because now this applies to all of our drum kit, all the individual parts that make up this drums. We have our kick, our snare, and our hi-hat. So now when we do a boost, it boosts all of those individual components. So we want to be careful of how much we're really boosting here. Unlike how I normally would boost and gain, or boost up a gain for the EQ, we want to be extremely mindful for this particular one, because now we're boosting everything. All right, so I'm gonna stop it right here a little bit here. I'm gonna filter out this a little bit more. I'm gonna go over what I did here. So a little bit of high pass filtering, just because we don't need that 30 hertz there. It's always just dead sound. And then around 50 hertz. Again, because I know what's gonna happen on our other. We do have our kick and our sub kick. That's gonna be really consuming, or pretty much we're gonna have those frequencies available to us. So we might as well just scoop out some of those 50 hertz to 80 hertz area. We don't really need that area anymore so much, because we know that we still have other tracks that will fill up this gap here. So we can scoop up some of those frequencies to clean up this drum track a bit more here and kind of emphasize on different aspects of our drum kit. now when we hear the kick, especially the kick notably, there's more sustain on our kick. So it feels like you can feel the fullness of the kick compared to before where it was just a punch. This was like a punch and going all the way in. So you can feel a double impact right there. I feel this time after applying the EQ and compression, it helps really give more sustain and more depth to that kick. We're gonna continue on and work on the other stuff. So we'll start on our bass and work our way through. Yep, this is gonna be definitely gonna. All right, so I'm just going over the cellos. I guess cello bass right now. So I'm noticing two different things that our cello bass is doing. And it's very interesting. This is where we can really add a little bit more detailing to preface more other frequencies over others, especially considering what these two cello basses are doing. All right, so what I did with the EQing, like I said earlier, I'm going to focus more on that mids to highs, and we can kind of have a more specialized version of what this bass cello is doing. So that way we can free up more space to allow what our other bass cello is doing. So what I did with the EQing here was I did kind of a more of interesting approach. So normally I won't filter out that high, but in this case of what the cello is doing for this particular track, it makes more sense to prioritize and have a more focused type of sound here in this case. So what I did was I filtered out to 80 hertz. We don't really need all that bass down here. We're going to give it to our other bass instruments and other tracks that would probably make better use of this. I'm going to filter a little bit higher and just squeeze that out. Next thing I actually decided to do was it sounded very boxy and honky in a lot of sense, but again, I feel like the boxiness is more of a bigger issue here than honkiness. The honkiness is just due to the effects of what this cello is running through right now. So I don't know exactly what's being run, what is actually applied onto this track before I received it, but in this case, it just sounded more boxier, and that's kind of what I don't want to see. So I scooped out kind of around the 400 hertz area. You know, generally for boxiness is around 400 to 800 hertz. I just took away some of that 400 hertz away. And that's kind of what I did with the EQing. So let's actually take a listen and see how that changed it. Pretty good with the EQing there. Let's actually head over to the next one, which is kind of our more lower deep of cello bass type of sound here. All right, we also have more sounds that I don't want to hear. I understand this is for effects, but it kind of hurts me a little bit. All right, so I'm going to add a little more thickness here. Kind of around that 80 hertz. Scoop us on that 30s. Kind of really like that little bass boost here for that type of sound. So I'm going to give it around 3. A little deeper type of sound here. Again, we don't really need too much of that 400 to 500 hertz area. All right. All right, so I'm pretty sure you're able to hear the difference here with that EQ. There's more emphasis on those sub frequencies here. Again, I can only affect so much of what this track is doing because of what Andre has previously done in terms of already pre-applying some effects on it. So I only have so much I can really do to bring out the best out of what I'm given. So in this case, I kind of focus more on that low sub frequencies, kind of around that 80 hertz area. 80 to 90 was kind of where that low end. This is kind of where the cello shines the most at. And this is kind of the type of sound I want to have, a more refined type of sound and more deeper focus on for this track here. All right, next thing we're going to do is going to apply some sort of compression to make things a little more balanced here. So I'm going to take a look at, listen to our bass and see what we can do with it. Our cello bass, sorry. See what it sounds like here. Okay, yeah, I think I prefer the 3 to 1 a little bit more here. Actually, it's really impressive how much difference this already makes for the track. It's kind of crazy. So one thing you probably didn't notice, especially when I'm working with this cello bass, is that now I can feel more fullness with the combination of these two individual cello bass tracks that's focusing on different parts of the frequency spectrum.
now it feels more complete because previously we have this. So let's take a listen to it together. So not to say that this is a bad sounding cello bass track, but then it doesn't feel full enough, and the bass just at least the lower frequencies doesn't have that extra layer of oomph and depth to it. So I'm gonna let you take a listen to it. So let's now apply our EQ and compression together now. So now we already have a glimpse of what it sounded like before. It sounds great, but it just needs a little bit more depth and focus to shape out the sounds a bit more here. So now it really sustains itself. So now let's actually add the drum kit to see kind of where all this lines up. So now the crazy thing is I can hear distinctly the kick of our drum kit and now our bass cello. I can hear both of them being very deep and full, unlike before where it's all these frequencies are kind of jumbled together and kind of fighting for the same spot. Now I can feel more difference in terms of distinguishing, oh, I can hear that kick, but now it feels deeper and more elongated. And with my cello bass, I can still hear it now. I can hear it a lot better than before. Now you can hear the deepness of the cello mixed in with that heavy kick low end. And that's exactly what we're looking for. Kind of more of that separation and more distinct focus to get these sounds more flushed out.